Hello, this is Tord Gustavsen talking from Montreal Jazz Festival 2010. Well, jazz is a very broad term. If you define it broadly as improvisation, then that's how I started. I played with my father when I was little. We came up with small songs, made stories with music to them, and I composed my own stuff. So in that sense, I started with jazz when I was 3 or 4 years old. But if you define it much more narrowly, it was at a much later stage, because I played classical music and I played church music and I composed my own songs in various styles, and then it was not until my late teens, early 20s that I started really getting into jazz tradition per se and listening to the whole American jazz canon. And then I guess after that it kind of all started getting together, where I found ways to integrate the jazz traditions with my own musical childhood, and that's when I've arrived at my angle to jazz, or my point of departure in a more personalized way of thinking jazz. The only real guiding star, or the only real principle, is that of musical honesty. It's the only thing that really matters is that you write and play in a way that feels essential, that it feels important, where you feel you're saying something that you cannot say with words. And to me, that space happened to be somewhere in the crossing of early jazz and blues and spirituals and Western classical music, impressionist composers, Scandinavian folk music. So, you know, it's all there. The whole frame of reference is all there, and it's a matter of trying to say something unified and something with a unique voice in the midst of all these myriads of influences. And that's basically my only ideology, to try and make sense of everything that surrounds me and everything I've listened to all my life into something that sounds whole and real here and now.
Sans plus tarder, une vraie bouffée d'air frais. Please give a warm festival welcome to Tord Gustavsen Ensemble.
There is some truth to the cliches about us playing melancholy jazz or playing very silent jazz. But to me, the whole notion of sadness is just, you know, one part of a much bigger truth. To me, our music is just as much about celebration, about embracing beauty and embracing life, but doing so in a way that remains honest and remains in touch with meditation and in touch with sorrow. So to me, at least, it's much more about playing the totality of emotions. But it just so happens that in this band, and for us as musicians, playing with a lot more space and playing with a lot more emphasis on the small nuances rather than going for the extremes in tempos and in density all the time feels much more true, or feels much more essential. We could have done it differently in other settings, but in this setting and with the material I write, this way of playing just feels much more essential. No, it's difficult to say just what I think about when I compose. It's primarily just a search for a good melody, to feel that this melodic movement in this kind of harmonic environment is touching in on something that feels essential and that feels like what I'm really about here and now. And then composing a piece is of course just the start. When you play with a group like this, a large part of what actually shapes the music is being done collectively with the arrangements and improvisations, and the pieces always evolve and change from concert to concert. So that part of the compositional process is definitely something we do together. And I guess the basic metaphor here is that of, or the basic two metaphors are those of conversation and of breathing. You need to listen just as much as you play when you're on stage. You need to really take in what the others are doing, take in what you yourself have been doing, and then decide what to do based on that. And that's a process where taking in is just as important as being active. And you need to have your phrases breathe. You have to breathe both in a metaphorical and in a literal sense when you're on stage. Otherwise, it gets too stressed and you play too many notes. Tonight we play with a quartet version of the ensemble. The beauty of the new ensemble to me is that it can operate in trio, quartet and quintet versions. And in one way those are three different bands because of course it sounds different, and we use some of the material in one format and some of the others, but in another sense it's the same band because it's the steady group of musicians who know each other, and much of the material is also used, you know, across the different variations of the ensemble. So all three variations to me are equally artistically interesting, and I have the same passion about playing with a full quintet, with a quartet and with a trio lineup. So here tonight in Montreal it will be the quartet with saxophonist Tord Brunborg and drummer Jarle Vespestad and bass player Mats Eilertsen. Tord Brunborg is the ideal sax dialogue partner for me because he has the strength needed to really enter into the group as a separate, unique voice, and he has the humbleness needed to enter into it as a part of the organism. My role on the piano changes, of course, a little with the introduction of another melodic instrument, but we do a lot of dialogue interplay when we play together, and I also do some pieces where the basic melodic movements are done from the piano, and Tord has other kinds of musical roles. So I would say that the basic attitude towards composing and towards playing remains the same, but I explore, you know, different shades of my own piano playing as well, and I stand back even more than I did in the trio, I think. I think there is definitely some truth in that the Scandinavian jazz scene has offered and is still offering a rather unique perspective on today's music scene and the jazz world. Seen from abroad, seen from without, there's probably some truth in it that the taste for a kind of sensual minimalism unites many of the Scandinavian jazz bands, and the openness towards almost like a pop music way of focusing on melody while still preserving the freedom of improvisation. That's something that we share with many of our colleagues, and that remains a huge passion for us in my band too.